Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of History After Hours. My name is Kevin Pumphrey, and with me, like normal, is Mr. Ron Franklin. Mr. Jeremy Nixon was unavailable today, but I'm sure he will be back with us next time. We are recording this on Thursday, January 20th, 2022. It is our first podcast of the new year, and in this episode, we start off talking about the new wave of COVID that is wreaking havoc on our nation at this point. We also talk about what it's like teaching during this time. We go into a little bit of the Russia-Ukraine story that is developing. We talk a little bit about the division that is happening within the United States, and we look at it from a historical perspective. And then we end talking a little bit about family history. So, with all that said, we hope you enjoy this podcast. Okay, History After Hours. It is January 20th, 2022. This is our first podcast of the new year.
Welcome to the new year.
Yeah, we're missing Mr. Nixon because, like most people, he had a COVID scare. And so, yeah, he's not on the podcast today, so it's just a
best
duo.
Wishes. That's thoughts and prayers. I mean, that sounds disingenuous, but I really mean that. He's fine, but out of precaution, sure.
Let me ask you, just kind of as we start off, this is our first podcast back from Christmas break, and we have been dealing really since day one, this, I guess, the new variant plus the old Delta variant, and it's been, ravaging the area.
Why do they call
the
it,
nation.
Well, I'm sure there's a scientific reason why they call it Omicron, but that just sounds like, I don't know, it sounds harsher than Delta.
It does.
I have the Delta variant, Omicron.
Yeah.
Have you seen the potential new mixture of the two? I laugh about that. Why am I laughing? Like this, it's not funny.
What is it, Deltacron?
Omicron, yeah, Deltacron. Is there a Deltacron?
Sounds like a transformer.
It does sound like a transformer. Oh, man. It is transforming.
Deltacron.
So that works.
A symbol.
Sadly. A symbol. Oh, man. Yeah.
Voltron. That's kind of like that cat one. It wasn't a transformer, but it was kind of like a transformer.
What are you talking about? Thundercats? What are you doing?
I don't know. There was one called Voltron. I guess that's what it reminded me of. Anyhow.
But so how many more variants are there? Oh,
I don't know.
How many more are coming? So I saw this morning, they're like, there's a sub-variant of Omicron. I'm like, oh, my God. What now? It's to the point where I just kind of shake my head,
We get all the way down to Zetacron.
Yeah, right. Just keep on adding new crons. Well, okay. So, but on a super serious note, don't you think that this is following a similar trend to what we studied then about the Spanish flu in 1918 or post World War I? I saw some scientific person saying this, and I don't know if you've heard this or not.
I don't know.
So 3 waves basically out of that one too. The third wave was sort of, it mutated and transformed and then hit another large group of people. But then that was sort of the variant itself wasn't as deadly as the first 2, although it was more widespread. So, but then after that, it kind of started tapering. And I wonder, I hope, now that we're hitting this third wave, that this is kind of really, we keep saying this, we're going to turn the corner,
Yeah.
Maybe we're really about to do that, although the numbers in our state and actually in the country, they don't seem to be going down anytime soon.
Yeah, I think I talked to my personal doctor, and he said if this virus acts like a normal virus, the mutation should be weaker but more contagious. And getting this variant of the virus will still build antibodies, which should be good for the next one. Since so many people are getting reinfected, whether they've had the vaccine or not, they are getting more of a natural immunity. And if enough people have that, then you could see how this could be the last big push of this virus.
Well, you gotta hope that there's something, whether it's vaccines or natural immunity that's developed after contracting some sort of lighter variant, a lighter, you don't have a major symptomatic episode, you're not hospitalized with it, and you catch some protection from that. Like maybe that's the key ultimately.
I know we're treating this one different. When the OG coronavirus happened, which I contracted in November of 20, I guess, when I had it. Was it that long ago? I don't know. Everything's messed up. I don't know what's what. But when we were at school, if a student had it, tested positive, it was like, hold the phone. Who was around this kid?
Yeah. The nurses come barging in
wearing hazmat suits and yeah. Now it's everybody's got it.
Tape measures and rulers and who sat where and where's your seating chart and yeah.
Yeah, and don't you feel like now it's just like, everybody's got it. So, I mean, I'm getting emails every day. Hey, I've tested positive. I'll be back next week. I tested positive.
I'm cautious to be flippant about it, though.
I know.
And here's why. I was watching some stuff from the Arkansas CDC and Arkansas Department of Health yesterday, as a matter of fact. And they are saying, look, we're calling this a milder version, but it's not mild, it's milder. And they think that there's misinformation about that, and people are saying, well, it's no big deal, so I can just go off. Our case numbers are like skyrocketing. We had we had 14,500 yesterday, new cases. Hospitalizations are at a new high in the state. Several major health facilities in Little Rock are like, look, we're maxed out. If we get much more, we're going to be in trouble. So what they were saying, what the health officials were saying yesterday is, it's not over. So calm, pay attention. Do what you need to do just to keep yourself protected. Don't be ridiculous and think that this is something that can't affect you, especially if you're unvaccinated. So they ran the numbers yesterday too, just for a little bit of logistics here. So here's some statistical things. 65 or was it 68% of all the people who are hospitalized right now in this state are unvaccinated. 32-ish or 33-ish% are double vaxxed, and 3% are also boosted. So that gives you a real clear indication of how much the vaccines are actually keeping people out of the hospital, and for the people who are choosing not to be vaccinated, like how much this is actually hammering them. I mean, and if they're in the hospital, like that's a big deal. Like you deal with it at home, you get a light symptomatic case of this, and you can walk away, and you've had a little bit of fatigue and maybe a headache. Then good on you. But we need to understand that it's still hitting people, even with this other variant, and so we got to be vigilant about that too, I think. And I don't think our news boys have been doing a really good job of saying, hey, nor do I think our every day the governor comes on TV and he says, I expect that people are going to do the right thing and wear their masks and social distance, but we're not going to mandate anything. And I'm not necessarily advocating for mandates, but stronger language than that might seem more appropriate, especially right now when you have like record numbers, and they're predicting, and this is a prediction that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we'll see if it comes true. They're predicting maybe 20,000 cases a day before this peaks in our state. I mean, that's pretty stunning, really. So, on one hand, I hope finally, we keep saying that, we're turning the corner. I hope that that's finally true, but this is not over.
It does seem, and of course, we are school teachers, so we can only talk about what we experience here. But I just know last year, I would like to know, of course, people were virtual. So, but I'm thinking about how many people actually got COVID versus how many people were quarantined because somebody they know or somebody else in the class got it.
We're not seeing as much of that this year.
What we see this year is I've tested positive. I mean, I've seen so many students say that. And really, that's kind of the only way you get to be quarantined now. I mean, a few people have been quarantined in my class because they were with somebody that tested positive. Mm-hmm. But with all these new rules, and of course we have new rules.
A lot of those kids, sorry to interrupt you, but I know a lot of those kids were like, oh yeah, I was quarantined, but I wasn't sick. But then it got me too while I was, so.
Yeah, that's something else is people are testing, but they're testing too early. And this variant, for some reason, it's taken a while to show up on the test. So they're telling people when you first get your symptoms, wait a couple days to get tested. Mm-hmm. I don't know anything other than that's what I'm hearing. Now, it's just interesting. I wonder if it's part because we have so many more students that are testing positive, and it doesn't seem that we're taking the same strict precautions we were taking before, plus fatigue of just being on the third year of this and being like, we know here we go again. I don't know, but I just know it feels different.
Do you think we're underreacting at this point, or do you think it's just like this is what we should have done to begin with? Like, what do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I really don't. Study after study, of course, shows that for children, although there are exceptions,
Sure.
it's pretty mild for them. Comorbidities for older people, that's always going to be the biggest issue. Since we teach at a school with mostly young people, now staff members, of course, that's another thing. I don't know. It was just such a dramatic. We started the year without mask, or we started with mask and then we took them off shortly
they were
after.
Gone, right?
And now they're back on, and it's just like I don't know.
But every school's kind of doing it their own way.
Yeah.
We had just last week. We were the only school in the county, I think, that kept the doors open. Everybody else switched to virtual for 2 or 3 days there to finish out the week, and then come into the Dr. King holiday to try to give it one more day to I don't want to say dwindle, but that
Right.
to ease off, I guess, the infection rates, because it was happening so. That you were getting 2 or 3 kids a day out of a lot of different classes that were being pulled. Hey, you got to go home. Hey, you got to go home. Or kids going, hey, I don't feel well. I need to go down and get checked out. Like, I've had several kids do that, and then they just didn't come back, and they email me later, yeah, I'm at home. Although, thankfully, from the kids that I've talked to that have come back, they've had fatigue, and I had a headache, and I was down for a couple of days. But they've had. I don't know anybody here, at least. I don't personally know anybody who's had a real hard time with it. Although I know people are having a hard time with it. Otherwise, the hospitalizations wouldn't be up.
Right. Yeah. It seems to be milder, it also, it might be disheartening for a lot of people, because it seemed like at first, let's wait for that vaccine. As soon as that vaccine, and then not everybody got it. Some people got it. Then okay, you got to get another one. So we got another one, and then okay, you got to get boosted. And then even with all that, people still got the virus. And so it's like, okay, well, what do we do? And I don't think it's and there's a lot of misinformation, of course. The CDC, of course, has to change their protocols. I just wonder, it's just not easy to figure out exactly what to do, what's going on.
Don't you think some common sense should play in here somewhere? How would you normally protect yourself if you were around people who were sick? You would normally distance yourself. You would probably try to limit your exposure to them. Maybe you put on a mask. I mean, I don't. It seems like those should be simple things to do, but I think people have gone, for whatever reason, in the opposite direction, running full force. I've heard of people having COVID parties. Have you heard of this? I know.
I have, yeah.
What are you doing? And you may be fine,
right?
But at the same time, you're rolling the dice, because somebody there might have. I haven't heard as much about blood clots with this variant. That was one of the big things with the original, right?
Yeah.
People were catching blood clots, and next thing you know, they're not coming out of the hospital in the same way they came in.
It's rare, but I've heard that. But I haven't heard it as much with this one.
I just don't know if that information is just not being promoted. What do you think about the criticisms of the Biden administration for their response? How do you feel about the response, and how do you feel about the criticisms? Do you think they should have done more? Because that's what a lot of people are and they're questioning them directly. Because Biden had a press conference yesterday, first one of the year, and he fielded questions for more than an hour.
I think Biden is in a no-win situation and has been since the beginning. He inherited a polarized country with a federal structure. You have states that can do a lot of things. This is one of those things that it's hard for a president to just roll in with mandates. I mean, obviously you can declare a national emergency. There's probably certain avenues he could take, but politically he would.
Supreme Court just said that his mandates were illegal and banished them. Did you see that? Yeah.
So he's just in a no-win situation. I don't know how you handle it.
What about the? They were really criticizing him over the testing. We need more rapid testing. Why can't people get rapid testing? First of all, I don't know why you need a rapid test, but maybe you do. We seem to have plenty here at school.
If the rapid tests are just as good as the long-term one, at least you could know and notify people quickly.
When I worry about at-home test, if you're doing your own rapid test, I worry you're not doing it correctly. How do you? Because I haven't done one. Maybe there's somebody who monitors you. Do you have to Zoom call while you stick the thing up your nose? I don't know.
We've done them. You buy them at Walgreens, and we've done them.
You have? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, how do you know you're doing it right?
Well, it has instructions, and it's it's not like the deep swab in the nose. It's just right under the.
Okay.
It tells you what to do.
Well, because I know when I went and got tested a couple of different times when I thought I'd had an exposure, they were swabbing my medulla oblongata.
Oh yeah, you feel it in your toes. Yeah, I had that one too. And now, of course, the Biden, we ordered our 4 at-home tests. You can go right now to.
Why did you feel the need to get those? Because I'm still.
I mean,
I'm still
we had home tests.
I'm still debating on whether I want to do that. I mean, I don't know why I need. Do I need to do that?
We have kids, and as kids do, they get stuffy noses, and now you're
So
wondering,
I can do this conveniently at home without having to rush them to the clinic or the walk-in thing.
It's sold out
whatever.
everywhere. So if you rush them, and of course the school's doing a great job at it.
Right.
So we actually did take them here
bravo,
for this one. But like Walgreens, they're all sold out. You could go like the drive-through thing, but then it's 3 to 5 days before you find out. So do they just miss all that school? If you could find out then, they can come back to school the next day if they're negative.
Oh, I got you. Okay,
So we got these home tests and when kids get stuffy noses all the time or a headache or whatever, and so you just want to find out, well, is that this or is it just normal? Because, we're also in Arkansas where allergies are out of control. So for me, it was just like, well, let's at least have some assurance that it's not COVID. Even though it's mild and all that, at least we know it as quick as possible. So we ordered 4 more because, once again, there's 4 of us in the house.
I haven't been dramatically inconvenienced anytime I felt I needed to go get a test, though. And so that's when they said, you need a rapid test. I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe I do. If I had kids at home, that would probably be different as well.
Yeah, because we're giving it to each other, and we just need to figure out what are we giving to each other here. Yeah.
You hold this for a while.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens is somebody gets it, and then it runs through the family over the course of a couple weeks. And so we just want to identify, well, what's running through the family over the course? Is it a common cold or is it?
Yeah. Well, no, okay, that makes sense. Okay. Well, so you can order those online now.
Yeah, you can go to whatever it is, COVID test with an s.gov, and you can just type in your address, and they'll send you 4 tests for free.
Okay.
So, I think actually this failure of testing was the failure in the Trump administration. Had we had access to quick, reliable tests on a massive scale and could track COVID better, I think we could have mitigated how, because we didn't do well when this thing first hit. Before the vaccine came out, we did good with getting the vaccine together, I think.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The one thing I could probably say is like, hey, you all pulled together and got that put together in a record time.
Yeah, we didn't have the mechanics in place to get a bunch of tests out to a bunch of different people, because remember that was he famously said, well, if you want a test, you can have a test, and that wasn't the case. They couldn't get tests.
So with that being said, when the Biden administration comes in, knowing that was the case, why do you think that, or do you think that it was just still, no matter what they did, it's going to take longer?
Yeah, at that point, tracking is...
Because I've heard people sort of insinuate, and some people actually outright blame them for dragging their feet, and you should have known better, and why weren't you doing this sooner? So what do you think about that?
Yeah, and once again, as I always say to my students, the president gets way too much blame or credit for anything. So it's easy to say Biden or the Biden administration, but he's fighting governors all over as well, plus all these activist groups. I don't know that there's anything he could have done different. And also, there's been inconsistencies from the scientific community. We've known pretty much from the beginning that the vaccines work, they are effective. Now, they're less effective, of course, against this new variant. We know that now.
Well, less effective from keeping you from getting it, but still effective from keeping you from dying from it.
Yes, less effective
likely to go to the
overall.
hospital. Yeah, so we want to be...
But yes, effective in keeping you from dying or being hospitalized. Of course, it all depends on you, right? And that's something else.
It's almost like being grazed as opposed to being shot.
Right. Yes. And I think the biggest weakness to me of the whole response is there's been zero public push or education for how to boost your immune system. Which
that's true.
Can also mitigate some of the major effects, hospitalizations, and deaths.
You having been a health trainer guy at one time, like what would you say for people who want to try to boost their immunity? Hey, get the vaccine. But aside from that, what could I do normally, naturally, day to day that would make me less susceptible to disease in general?
And I think it's common knowledge to most people, but maybe it's not, which is make sure you're getting good sleep, make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Try to eat healthy, limit the sugars and the things that can cause more inflammation in the body. Salt, things like that. Make sure to take vitamins. Vitamin C, vitamin D, which 70% of people are basically deficient in, because we are creatures of the outside, yet we stay indoors too much. and that's where you get most of your vitamin C naturally. Supplementing with vitamin D and C and zinc has shown to be pretty effective in boosting your immune system and helping you, even if you get it, your body's able to fight back quicker.
Yeah, you're already stronger.
And of course, keeping your body at a weight.
Okay, I was going to suggest that. I was going to say that too. I heard that if you have a certain body mass index or you have an obesity issue, like that can be really a factor because your body is less likely to be able to fight.
That is the number one predictor of having a hard time with COVID is obesity.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of all the things. Because once again, obesity causes high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes.
Right.
Being at a larger body size makes your whole body you're just a pound of fat. You have all these blood vessels, and your heart has to pump blood through all of that. So it has to work harder automatically. Breathing is more difficult. You need more oxygen for the blood if it's having to go through that pound of fat. Sure. So you don't think about your capillaries and blood vessels going through a pound of fat, but just so the more fat you have on your body.
So it's constricting.
It's constrict. So you're already at a weak point. Then you get something like this, and it can take you out. So keeping your body at a healthy fat content, you don't have to be a superstar athlete. And by the way, obviously athletes can get it and die from it too. It's not the only reason. But it does seem to be the number one predictor for all the other problems is obesity.
Is it hard to remember what it was like before? It's becoming more, it's like this distant light in the background of my mind going, this is what it was like before we transitioned into all of this. I mean, I remember it, but at the same time, it's not like it's not my day-to-day reality anymore. Like all those things I took for granted, just go and do whatever you want, whenever you want, that kind of thing. Now I'm always like conscientious about crowds and who's wearing what and how, somebody sneezes and you're automatically like,
Isn't that weird? Yeah. We should not even think about it.
I'm not paranoid, but at the same time, I'm very conscientious.
You're aware.
Yeah.
And it's good to be aware. Yeah, if I see a picture of a crowd, you're just like, oh, it's just for a second, just like, what's, oh, yeah, okay.
Watching some of the NFL playoffs recently or the college playoffs and the national championships, and you see all those people together, and you're like, I mean, just part of me goes,
Well, it's funny you bring this up because I asked my 13-year-old daughter last night, do you remember what it's like before all this happened? She was 10 years old when this started.
Oh, yeah.
Now, for her, there's not much life before that. For us, we got decades.
Yeah, sure.
And we still can't remember because we adapt so quickly. And she just really quickly, she goes, yeah, I think they're going to change AD and BC to pre-C and post-C. Pre-COVID, post-COVID.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, all right, well, I hope not. But she's like, yeah, I'm ready. She just acted like, let's get this behind us, And anyhow, I don't know. It's interesting to see how children, you have a granddaughter that's been born during this. This is all she knows. And a lot of kids don't remember what it was like 2-3 years ago.
No, she'll never know a life before this. I'm hoping that by the time she becomes more fully aware of larger things, that this will have passed us in some way, that we can be more what we were like
Yeah, I cringe every time somebody says.
So I hope she's still young enough now. She's only 2.
Yeah, right.
And so there's a lot of things hidden from her. You know what I mean? Not that she's just not old enough to understand certain realities.
And people adapt to the reality around them. She's not thinking, I wish I was born before COVID.
No, but what we've noticed though is that if we're out with my daughter and she has Scarlett with her, that she's getting better. But at first if we were in a public place, it made her a little nervous because she's been, even though she goes to daycare and there's a lot of kids there, being around a lot of adults is something that hasn't been part of her life in the way that like it normally would have.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a weird, there's a certain amount of socialization that she hasn't been privy to because she's been quarantined. The first year of her life, the first 6 months for sure, because she was born at the end of 2019. She was 3 months old when this all started, basically. She's been locked down.
That's crazy.
In those formative moments. And so
those are formative, yeah.
And so it's taken some time. It's happening, but it's taken some time for her to be more comfortable with big noises and lots of, like I said, not so much about kids, whatever, yada, yada, but she's not as she's been. You can see it in her eyes. She's just a little bit when there's a lot of adults.
Who's in charge here?
Yeah, like what's happening? It's just unusual, right? And so she knows that it's unusual, and so she's trying to. But it's also cool to see her learn to deal with that, like you said, adapt. You know?
Well, I cringe when people go, "It's the new normal." I don't want it to be the new normal.
No, it's not.
I don't want it to be.
It's the next Abby normal. It's not.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I know some schools, they chose to go virtual for a week. I don't know if Lake Hamilton's back in this week.
I think they are.
They tell us that we're kind of getting over the hill, hopefully here in the next few days. And
we've had a lot of kids come back this week that were out last week.
I did too. Yeah.
So I don't know. Boy,
I would not want to be an administrator making.
Aren't you so
these
glad
decisions.
that we're not virtual though? That online teaching was.
I'm telling you, people can be negative and all that, but I'm trying to stay positive. And the way I do it is I compare this year to last year.
You know what gets me too is, and no offense to anybody across the country doing what they think is right, but okay, we taught all last year through this with as many kids who could show up, and we taught for the kids that were online. We did stuff for them. Our doors have been open, and we haven't missed a beat this year at all. And I look around the country and I see teachers unions who are fighting going back into the classroom, and we talk about I think the Chicago teachers have been on the news quite a bit and how they refuse to go back in these blockades and these protests and when will the kids go back to school? And I'm like, really? We've been doing it the whole time. Yeah. And not that I'm seeking special recognition, but at the same time, if we can do it, you can freaking do it.
Yeah,
what's the holdup?
I heard a union leader in the teachers union say, "We're not going back until it's 100% safe."
Well, that's never going to be a thing,
and it's never been that way.
Yeah, it never was before. How can you guarantee 100% safety? Nobody could do that. That's asinine.
So once again, you go back to risk management. You have to take risk. If we can't eliminate risk, we take a big risk every time we get in our automobiles. So yeah, you've got to live with risk, and I don't want to live in fear, you know. So,
but doesn't it surprise you, or it did me anyway, when I saw that they're still arguing about going back into the classroom, and these kids, I worry about like what have they been doing, because they haven't been. They're not online either. I don't think, are they? I don't know. I don't know that part of the story. I shouldn't say too much there because I don't know, but they definitely have not been in the classroom, and we know from last year's experience, just being half off.
Letting kids be virtual was a bad idea.
Dang, that was hard. And so anyway, I just wonder. I need to check on that more to see have they gone back now? Have they come to an agreement?
It's different, right? It's different states, different locales. I'm sure it's different depending on where you live. I feel bad for the students that are at home, forced to be at home when, there's even no option of coming to school. So I'm kind of glad that we were able to keep rolling. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. But I mean, if we should be a model of some sort of efficiency, like if we have been able to keep the doors open. Yeah. And I know that we're a rural state, and I know that but still, I mean, we have classrooms filled with students, and we function, we have kids in fairly close proximity, and we teach the students that are here, and we have, this year the classes are back to normal size. Like I said, if we can do that, you can too. Like I'd like to see, and I haven't spoken to anybody from these other states or these other districts. I don't know what their actual argument is. I would be interested to hear it, like one-on-one,
I have no idea, other than it's a way to get some political points and some more power. I mean, it's a shame that COVID turned immediately into a political thing.
You've said this before. You hoped it would be something that would bring us together.
I think so. I mean, it's international. Yeah. I heard so many people go, "Oh, well, when the presidential election is over, I bet you won't hear about COVID." And like, they will in Italy and Greece, and like it's all over the world.
No, they're all faking it just for our
So, asteroid impact.
Propagandizing.
Well, this, of course, goes back. I don't know if you saw that. You had mentioned that Netflix movie, Don't Look Up.
Don't Look Up.
So that's
did you see it?
I did. I actually heard one of the producers interview it. And, of course, it's kind of a spoof on how we're treating climate change.
Sure.
But you could apply it to COVID. That that everything's political and they have to measure everything how they say, and they're ignoring some certain scientific things. And I mean, I thought asteroid impact, alien invasion, a virus pandemic, this should bring us together because it's not political. It doesn't care if you're Republican or Democrat. And same thing if an asteroid's headed our way. What are we going to say about that? It's Nancy Pelosi. She put that asteroid, or whatever.
You knew it was coming. You didn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Let's argue.
So I don't. We're just in that time. So, well, let's move to another topic because we're going to be dealing with this probably on and on. People are probably sick of hearing about COVID.
Well, say something else. Okay.
Teach me, at least briefly, if you can summarize what in the world is happening with Russia and Ukraine, and what is our response, if any. I know it's that's a pretty rich topic when you talk about that relationship.
Be brief. I don't know.
Can you give me 100, 200 years, 300 years of history in 2 minutes?
Sum that up in a sentence, can you? Okay.
Act like I'm a 5-year-old and tell me what's going on.
Okay, it's complicated.
Have you ever heard of the word unpack? Well, I'm back to unpack.
Can I unpack this for you?
Yeah.
In 3 sentences or less? No. Well, I'll tell you what's happening, first of all. And we've had some conversations with some kids today, juniors and seniors mainly, who have been watching this and are concerned about it because they're, history and politically minded people because they're still with us as juniors and seniors. And so Russia is poised to invade eastern Ukraine, which the Ukraine is a country that used to be part of the old Soviet system, and they bounced out as the Soviet system fell apart in the early 90s and became an independent country. But they've had, even since that time, sort of close ties with the new Russia, and their government, up until fairly recently, has been sort of, not, I wouldn't say in the pocket of Vladimir Putin, but they're friendly or at least more friendly with them than they are with the West. And so they're in this weird position of do we become more like the Western countries? Do we stick closer to our sort of Eastern heritages from the Cold War era? And there's this battle in the country about which way they need to go. And in the capital of Kiev specifically, you've had lots of turmoil as of late because there was a president, and I looked his name up earlier, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. I apologize for that. Petronov or something like that. And he had been a pro-Putin, pro-Russia kind of guy. Well, the country was pushing hard, especially from like western part of Ukraine on. We would like to get closer to NATO. We would like to be more friends with the United States and with Britain and France and all the trade that comes along with those friendships, and less likely to. They wanted to kind of distance themselves from Russian influence. Well, the president cracked down on that, and there were riots and protests. This was in 2014 and 2015, and they overthrew that guy. He fled to Russia. Is now, I think he's still living in Moscow, actually, and they replaced him with a more Western-friendly government. During that same time frame, Russia took it upon themselves in a really strategic move to take advantage of the situation that was unfolding in the violence in Kiev. They ran through and took a strip of land in near the Black Sea, and then took the Crimean Peninsula. So they've been occupying that, and they've claimed it as their own. So it's sort of been sitting here ever since with that dynamic in place. What's going to happen now that this has gone on? They're not going to give the Crimea back to Ukraine. Nobody can kind of make them. Ukraine's not part of NATO, so we don't really have any justifiable military options there. They're not part of an alliance that we're guaranteed to go and protect. They've chosen not to be part of NATO. And in the very eastern section of Ukraine, an area called Donetsk, Russian troops have been helping an incursion against the government by people who live in that area. So you have an uprising that's gone on for multiple years now. At one time, Russia was sending in troops, but they didn't have Russian emblems on their uniforms, so they weren't technically from anywhere. We know now, they've been accused of being Russian troops, and now we know that they were. Now Russia is openly sort of funneling money and weaponry to these separatists, and they have troops on the ground there too. Well, in support roles, I suppose. So it's not like an invasion has happened, technically. But as of late, within the past few months, Russia has really been amping up their military presence on the borders. Right now, they've got nearly 100,000, or maybe more than that now, 100,000 troops on the borderlands north and south of this area I was talking about. And they have been streaming in train loads full of military equipment and trucks and Humvees and tanks and all kinds of stuff. And in response, throughout these years of this buildup, we've been adding more military weaponry into our NATO allies in the region, which would be like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, right? So these areas that that joined us after the fall of the Soviet Union, and so now we're going to have to wait and see what happens. So a lot of people are nervous about that. Is there going to be an invasion? I think there probably will be. I don't know how soon, but it looks like they're probably going to do it. I would guess before the month is out, maybe early March, but I don't know. If they don't do it, I'd be surprised. I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm not actually predicting that, but it feels like this is something different than we've seen in the past few years. Now the next thing is, what's the Western response, if anything? And I don't know. Really, our hands are kind of tied. There's not much we can do about it. Ukraine may seek help, but if we give assistance to a non-NATO country, will NATO do something? Probably not without our permission, even though we don't control NATO per se. If a state near Ukraine takes a hit, even accidentally, then we have justification to do something else. But we really don't need this to devolve into a bigger war. I don't think even if they do invade, they're not looking to take the whole country. I don't think. It doesn't make sense. The further east you go in Ukraine, the more Russian-minded people are, the more ethnically they would be, the more politically leaning towards Russia. So it makes more sense that they would take sort of this little eastern third, or maybe eastern fourth, I guess, if I look at the map.
Is that kind of how it breaks up? Is the people on the east would be for joining Russia?
They do have, so there's more support there for this actual moment. I think that I think people who are there would be glad to rejoin Russia. I don't think that they like being part of Ukraine. I think and I'm not calling this a nationalist movement necessarily, but I think that they don't. I don't think that they feel like they're part of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so this makes more sense to annex that part. Those people, I think, would support that, at least for the most part, from what I've read. So we'll see. Like I said, will it lead to a larger conflict in the region? I don't really think that that's true either. I think it'll be just like happened in 2014 when they took Crimea. People will shake their fist into the wind and yell a lot, but I don't think there will be anything. I don't see us making any kind of moves.
I wonder how much Russia is messing with their media in the Ukraine. You would think. I mean, there
were cyber attacks against the government just last week.
Right.
They shut down multiple government websites, and I think they targeted specific Ukrainian government, not just agencies but people. There's good farmland there. There's other resources there that they might be, wanting to utilize. Not just the people, but maybe they might want to run. There's trade routes that run through there as well, so maybe that's part of why they want that. But if nothing else, maybe it's a flex of power to reclaim something that you felt that you'd lost. Also, and I just read this today, apparently this is complete speculation. I haven't seen anything that verifies this at all, but from what I have seen and read, there's some indication that Vladimir Putin feels betrayed by the West when we promised Russia after the end of the Cold War in the 90s, that no other countries would expand into NATO. And that didn't happen. Like, there's a whole lot of them that came into NATO, and apparently, again, from what I've read, I have no idea if this is actually true, so I hesitate to really even say it, but it makes sense in the if I look at the overall context. If he feels a betrayal from the West expanding NATO, and that feels like a threat to him, especially since we've been loading up military there for a long time, I can see why he might, like, you know what, if nothing else, I need a little bit more of a buffer here. I can see why they might do that. I'm not justifying anything. I'm not suggesting that this is exactly what's happening, but I'm saying if I'm trying to look at it non-judgmentally, as a nonpartisan, what's he doing and why? Like, that seems to make sense to defend his country from what he sees as a threat. Now, but obviously here in the West, we're going to feel that this is a threat too. But I really think that, because I know a lot of people are looking at, go back to Biden, what are you going to do about that? I'd really, politically, international politics especially, I think his hands are tied. I don't think there's much we can do. But you know what I think a ramification of this will be? When he isn't able to do anything and Russia does take that eastern side of Ukraine, political enemies of Biden's here in this country and maybe in other places too will say, you're weak.
He was weak.
I think that a successful Russian incursion into eastern Ukraine nearly seals Biden-Harris loss in 2024 because people here will take that and use as political capital, people who are opposed to Biden, and will go, you're weak. Look, you should have done something, even though there's nothing that could be done as far as I can tell. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about being in a no-win situation. You said that with his COVID response. I think this is one of those too. But I think this long game, I think this could really hurt them politically.
Well, and on a related note, I think another threat that is similar to this is China taking Taiwan,
Oh God.
because Hong Kong has kind of been
Well, we have
taken.
guaranteed. Again, you need to back me up on this, or you need to tell me if I'm right. Since you're a U.S. history guy, do we have an agreement or a pact or a treaty with Taiwan saying that we will militarily defend them, or is that just sort of lip service since the 1940s?
That's a great question that I've never even tried to research. You know, we had this understanding that we would protect the independence of Taiwan. Now, obviously,
Is that, I know that's a verbal thing, and we've said it over and over again.
I don't know that we're tied to anything. I did some research on this a few months ago, and the growing consensus is that we don't do anything.
Ugh.
That we're not in the position to, and I don't know the relationship between Russia and China necessarily, whether that is going to play a part in any of this, but definitely in our financial and military situation after leaving Afghanistan.
Taiwan's one of the major economic powers in that region. Mm-hmm. If they fall to China like Hong Kong did, like that's wow. I mean, I guess it could happen. I hadn't really thought. I know that there have been some maneuvers over there.
You know, it was a big deal when Trump recognized, when Taiwan called, I believe, and he spoke to recognizing them to China. That was a big insult.
Well, sure.
Because we'd never really done that, even though we're protecting them. And it's just like, it's such a weird relationship. And I just think, I don't know, America seems weaker, especially after leaving Afghanistan the way we did, that debacle of trying to get out of there, even though it was time.
I think the whole Afghan story, not just that ending moment, makes us look weak.
I do too. And I think that's where China might be emboldened to, hey, if we're ever going to do this.
You know what's also interesting, and I don't mean to beleaguer the point, but there's Russian troops in Kazakhstan right now. There was an attempted, I don't want to say coup, but maybe there were definitely riotous moments in the capital city over high fuel prices, and it turned into something even uglier, and then troops were called in, and there was fighting, and people died, and now they asked, because Kazakhstan used to be part of the Soviet Union, they've asked Russia to come through, and I think they're part of the Commonwealth now as well, ask Russian troops to come in to help them defend themselves against these, marauders from their own country, and the Russian troops have been in, and are still, as far as I know, in Kazakhstan, and they're killing people. Like, you're no longer protesting, you're not allowed, shablang. And so that's another expansion moment, too, if they decide to stay. Like, what if you just come on back into the fold, fellas? I mean, they're already kind of there anyway with the Commonwealth mentality, I suppose. I don't know, you have to military occupy them. Anyway.
You're the world guy. My wonder is if, before the end of the month, as you predict, but, might not happen.
It's a mild prediction.
It's a mild prediction. Yeah. I won't hold you to it on the next podcast.
Yes, please. Yeah.
You promised.
I might be wrong. I kind of hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. If it happens that Russia does take part or some of the Ukraine, and we do nothing, would that embolden China then to move
on Taiwan
and go, okay, let's see if they make that decision.
Maybe.
Why would they do that and not that? You know what I mean?
Ooh, maybe.
And then of course, that will elevate.
Can we
China's
actually cripple any other country with sanctions? Because I think about
they all have allies that help them.
I think about Napoleon's continental system and how he tried to crush British economy with his nobody in Europe that I control will be allowed to deal with Britain, and that ended up backfiring and hurting him instead. And ultimately led to his downfall. So I wonder, is there really? I mean, we can freeze assets and we can threaten this and we can tell anybody that that deals with us that won't allow them to trade with this other group. But I don't know. Is that?
Well, they say, and of course this is they say, whoever that is. But like the next big thing is not sanctions. It's not military movements. It's cyber war. And somebody said, "Well, what's the cyber war going to be like?"
Are we good at that? You think?
I think we're okay at it. But when you ask the question, "What's the cyber war going to look like?" Somebody might say, "We're in it. Look what they're doing they're turning us on each other through Facebook and bots and
TikTok."
We're going, TikTok. We're giving them information about us. We're going through it now. And of course China's shutting down their people. Like obviously their social media is very limited. At 10 p.m. they can't get on.
Yeah,
whatever.
right. Yeah, sure.
So, like they're kind of jumping on this thing early, and they can do that in a land where they don't honor democracy and human rights as much. And we might be at a disadvantage because we don't do that. We have privacy rights. We could be in the middle of a cyber war with these big countries and not even hardly recognize it because we're turned on each other because of it.
We're weirdly participating in something that we have no idea. Maybe.
We're yelling about Hillary or Trump or all this, and a lot of that was helped and encouraged by these countries through social media. We're still doing it thinking the other is the enemy.
Okay,
That's
so
scary.
we need to be better at it then. Why aren't we? Or maybe we are. Maybe we just don't hear it.
I mean, we have the best tech companies in the world, even though China's starting to come on. But once again, it's profit. It's,
How do you defend yourself against something like that, especially now that so many things are automated and grid systems and communication systems and all these linked satellites, and one appropriately placed, Trojan horse in the system can knock out. You got to wonder, especially when all the cars are controlled by computers and they take away our steering wheels, which I'm going to continue to complain about.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I found a CD of an old Christmas album I did, and because we were going to play All Lang Syne for New Year's, couldn't find a CD player to play it. Around the whole house, I finally had to get in my wife's car to play it because my truck doesn't have it. It's a new truck, and we didn't have any of that.
That seems so weird.
It is weird. We are dependent on this technology, and this technology might divide our country and be what another country takes advantage of.
Darn you, MP3s dividing this country.
Isn't that Sun Tzu, The Art of War, turn the enemy on themselves?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So, yeah. So as they're unifying in Russia, and they're unifying because they can control the media, censorship, their people don't know what's going on.
I don't know if unifying is the right word. I would say consolidating power, centralizing power.
Deceiving their people
into
thinking we have enough freedom and we're turning on each other. It's really kind of a scary thing. I might have mentioned this on a podcast. I definitely talked to my class about that Gallup poll that came out and listed the biggest external threat to America. And for the first time ever, the number one answer was the other side. It wasn't coronavirus. It wasn't a nuclear war. The number one answer was the liberals or the right-wing conservatives or racism, or it had to do with the culture war.
Huh.
That's not good.
No.
That's not good. That's what most people think of the people that took the poll, of course. The thousands of people that took the poll.
We just had this conversation in my 10th grade classes about nationalism and how fragile that actually can be. Especially in a multi-ethnic, multi-religious. We're so diverse that how do you find a sense of unity amongst all those people? And up to this point, we have argued, whether we've fulfilled that or not, but we've argued that the diversity is our strength. Well, that can also be our undoing if we're not careful to maintain connectivity and conversations between those different groups. I mean, if everybody subdivides and fights like hell, we're in trouble. And we're already kind of seeing the beginnings of that. But we've been down these paths before, and hopefully we can turn this around. I mean, 1968. You want to see you want to see all this flare up? Go to 1968 and go look at some stuff happening then, and it will remind you of some things that we're looking at right now. So we can change that direction, but I don't know. I mean, is there a tipping point? Is there a point of no return? I don't know. I mean, I hope not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have time to go into this now, but like we had been talking, I'm teaching the Gilded Age, which is so similar to today in so many ways. You have the monopolies and the government wondering what to do about these monopolies. Well, today you have the 5 tech companies that control information. The government's wondering what to do about them. You've got build a wall today. Back then, it was Chinese exclusion. Immigration was a big problem. You've got race emerging as a big factor with segregation back then and voting rights for both. The Supreme Court gutted the Civil Rights Act. In the slaughterhouse cases, it gutted the 14th Amendment. Today it's the voting rights. I could go down the list. I've got 20 things in a voter suppression. We have higher voter turnout, political participation. It was 80% of eligible voters voted in the Gilded Age. And because of Trump, to some degree, we're at 50% now, which is a record high in this century. We got protests now, you got strikes and labor violence back then. There's a lot of parallels. And like I kind of kiddingly say, Teddy Roosevelt came along and really we focused outward.
Who was our Teddy Roosevelt?
Exactly. I'm not saying Teddy Roosevelt did everything good.
No,
but he got us to focus on America looking outward at the world.
Nobody's perfect, but you can look at some of the things he did accomplish that helped the country, and we can focus on that
and maybe saved us
Yeah.
from ourselves.
Can you focus on his negativity? I mean, yeah, you can definitely do that, and I think it's fair to do that. The things he did that we see as problematic now, especially, but that does not erase some of the positive things that he was able to do. And so I think that we need to be careful. That's what I was saying a while ago about trying to be when as historian-minded people, like we try to be as nonpartisan as we can to try to understand something in its context, as opposed to, and you're welcome to make value judgments on it all the time you want to, but at the same time, as we promote this through the lens of teaching and understanding, like we have to be able to look at all those sides and not say, well, this overshadows that.
That's exactly, like today we read a primary source of Frontier Thesis, which basically made the argument. It was written by a historian in 1893 after the census closed the frontier. We've settled it, it's over. People were a little anxious about that because we was always moving west. And the argument is the frontier was that made America unique. And of course, I tie that into American exceptionalism. And I'm telling the kids, I'm like, look, I heard actually yesterday on the news, conservatives were upset at American history teachers like me because they weren't teaching about American exceptionalism. I do teach about it. And I also teach about the negatives. I teach about America in a positive light and, the beacon of democracy of the time and, whatever. And I also teach about, the Filipino War and, killing 200,000 Filipinos because they wanted their independence and we didn't want them to have
Fair and
it.
balanced.
I present both sides.
But no, I'm being serious. Like
exactly.
That's the way we need to do that.
Yeah, I present both sides to the kids and let them look at the evidence. I don't, and this
I think that's one of the great things about the way we do this, especially
Exactly.
between you, myself, Nixon. We don't tell you what to think. We don't tell you how to think. We present things and let you then grapple with them. I don't have an agenda other than to get you to think about stuff.
And the problem with social media, going back to our conversation, what's dividing America is people are only presented one side over and over and over and over and over and over again because of the algorithms. Whatever they already kind of agree with, they're just going to get way more of that. And pretty soon they can't even see the other side. So that's why I really stress we got to look at both sides. And I tell the kids, like, when you leave my class, if you don't do anything else, be able to hold two opposing views in your head at the same time. It's okay to do that. You don't have to say it's this way or that way. It can be a little of both. And the truth could be in the middle somewhere. And I think more Americans have to challenge themselves to look at both sides. I think that's the only thing that gets us through this, unless a pandemic hits. No, wait, that didn't work. Because I thought for sure that would work.
Holy moly, what's it going to take? If not this. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So anyhow, we had the progressive reform era in the early 20th century and then World War I. And then, of course, the Great Depression got us focused on economics. I don't know what's going to happen to unify us, but I do think it's more Americans looking at both sides and looking at the other side not as enemies, but as Americans.
Mm-hmm. Americans with opposing views.
Exactly. Because, if we want a country, that's what it's going to take. And people don't realize that this country protects us.
This is something that we talked about, too. If one group decides that they want to exclusively own what it means to be patriotic, like that is dangerous. It's dangerous. But I've seen it happen in multiple countries over multiple centuries. And if you're going to have, again, especially in a country that is diverse as ours, other countries have come and gone that were as diverse as ours and were as strong or stronger than we are now. And they are no longer on that map in the political boundaries that they had because they couldn't find a way to come together. Not saying that you have to love everybody equally, not saying that you have to everybody be friends. You can still have your own opinions and do your own thing. But at the same time, we have to have some sort of mutual respect that other people do have opinions and we need to be able to at least listen to them. Whether we're convinced by them or not is not the point. But that everybody has a part to play and everybody's, like the opportunity to be fully participating and to feel that when we have patriotic things like the 4th of July and we say our pledge and we sing our songs, that means something to everybody who's here. Like It needs to mean something to you. And if it doesn't, that's why I actually said this to my class. If you listen to the national anthem and you have a hollow feeling inside, something's wrong.
Right.
I don't know how to fix that other than to say that we need to talk to each other.
Yes, ideas, conversations. I mean, that's all we have without resorting to violence. Just share. and that's just like what you said. Both extremes are bad. Extreme patriotism, where America's never done anything wrong, bad. And the other side, where America's never done anything right, bad.
It's not patriotic to tell me that you can't criticize authority because we were based on that, if nothing else.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, extremes, the moderate is where we have to end up. We've got to. That's all we have. And I don't know if it's going to take a presidential leader or if it's going to start at the local level, which it usually has in the past, like the progressive era. I don't know. But
hey, let's talk about our trip real quick.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I hope. Yes,
Keep
we are going.
crossed.
We're going. And I think we're going to go. I think they're going to say, just like the school, we're in session. We're going on our trip. Mask up, vaccinate, let's roll. And so, we're going here in just a couple months. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. We're going
40-something school days, and then we're off.
We're probably going to land in Rome, I assume. Maybe Athens, but we're going to land in Rome and then go to Florence, spend a few days in both places, then take a ferry across the sea to Greece and spend a day or two in Athens. And that's a 10-day trip for spring break.
And you said you've been to Athens before.
I have, but it's been so long ago. I really have spotty memories of Athens because it was at the end of the trip. I think we flew in though, but it was at the end of the trip after Rome. I think it was the first time I ever saw Rome. So it was like the first time Florence, Rome. I think I did the Leaning Tower, Pisa, all that, and then we did a day in Athens and flew out.
Oh, so it was
and
quick.
so it's like I just remember the ancient city on top, like you can see it from everywhere.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, and I watched the movie Troy.
I
remember we watched an outdoor movie Troy with the Parthenon over our shoulder.
Oh, that's cool.
So I remember that. That's kind of all I remember. I mean, it's Greece. It was a city.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to go back there.
I'm excited to go see our friends in Rome and other parts of Italy. But having not been to Greece, like that's going to be cool too. That'll be a nice. I hope it's the adventure we want it to be, and it's not as restricted as it could be, in 2 months' time. From what we're seeing with the countries that have already dealt with this Omicron stuff, like they're kind of peaking and starting to go off the other side of it's starting to get better. Do I say that? I hope that's the right.
Yeah,
phrase.
I mean,
hope it's getting better. And so by the time we get there, hopefully we're on the downstroke here as well, and then we can just like click and go on about our business. That's what we want to have happen. I really, really.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep trying to do these trips. I mean, next year,
because they're so
the plan is Paris, up to Normandy, and then across the Channel to London. And if parents are listening, we're going to take care of your kids as best we can, and this could be once in a lifetime. And we're going to be,
and the company's never going to. They don't put profits over people, as far as I know. We've never experienced that in the time frame that I've known them. I know you've known them a lot longer, but they do care about the people who are on the trips with them, and they want them to have a good time, and they won't put us in harm's way. Like they're really conscientious about that. So just same thing. If you
and if like a virus breaks out in Italy, they'll take us to Greece and they'll leave us there for a while. They're gonna know on the ground because they have EF all over the place. They're gonna know what's happening, and they've even put in more safety protocols since 2 years ago. The last time we went, I watched a video on it yesterday that all group leaders have to watch. So we're gonna go. I think it's gonna be great. I mean, you've been to Rome, you've been to Florence. Mm-hmm. This will be your first spillover into Greece, which every year you teach about Greece. So you're gonna see it with your own eyes. You're going to walk in the footsteps of Socrates and Plato and all those guys. So, I mean, that's the thing, is to go see it. Lay your eyes on it. And, we are heavily influenced by Greece and Rome. Europe is. And your family name, you found out, tracks to...
Okay, well, so it's a little
tell
more
us the story.
It's a little more complicated than that. So the family name, Franklin, tracks back to England. Mm-hmm. So we're English British as far as the
I bet you get the Ben
goes.
Franklin comparisons.
Yeah, constantly. A lot. Yeah, but that makes sense.
Dr. Franklin.
His face is on some of my money, not as much as I'd like. But on my dad's side of the family, the Franklin side joined in with a group with my great grandfather's surname was Robertson, which then we found out at some point was Robert's son. When they moved to the Americas, things get switched around sometimes with names. Well, we were able to trace them back through like Ancestry and some other things, like trace them back to Scotland. And so that was really cool. So we've got Scottish heritage. I knew from DNA tests, because we've done the 23andMe thing, I knew that I had Scottish heritage, but I wasn't sure like how it got there, which direction. So I kind of assumed, because Robertson is kind of a Scottish thing, Robert the Bruce and all those boys. So anyway, based on that, we were feeling pretty cool about ourselves. Hey, we've been able to trace some things back, and this is neat, and so pat on the back, we know our stuff. Well, for Christmas, my wife surprises me with a certificate and a portrait that they had done. So she actually, based on what we found out about my family heritage, got onto a website, found there's a conservation area in the Highlands, and there's a company that has bought land. And I found out more about this since I talked to you about it last. They are not only conserving this land, they're actually reverting it back to its natural state. They've taken land that was farmed commercially for like sheep grazing or maybe crops or trees. Like they had brought in non-native species and things and had really commercialized this land like full tilt. And now these guys have been spending more than a decade, buying land and taking away the damage from the commercial properties and reinvesting all the money that they get back into the environment itself, replanting native trees, bringing back native species, like really preserving the land. And so basically how they get the money to do that is they sell small parcels. And so anyway, my wife bought us some land in Scotland, and we don't have the right to improve it. We can't build houses and stuff like that. But at the same time, our money's gone to help with this conservation effort. And I get like an official certificate. Here's you own land, and
you could actually
we can go visit it. Yeah.
Okay, so longitude, latitude.
Yeah, I know exactly where it is. So
awesome.
part of the package that we bought also gives us the latitude and longitude. I can see it on Google Earth. I can see exactly where I can go. If we go and visit, I can go to this group that they have a facility there, and they'll take us out to where it is, and you can march around, and they talk about the conservation stuff. And so anyway, they're like stewards of the environment, and I found that really, really cool, and now we're part of that. And I got a cool portrait that goes along with it as like a Scottish lord.
I see it over there.
Yeah,
awesome.
So it's just really cool. I told my wife she wins Christmas this year because she surprised me with that. I had no idea they were doing that. So
maybe if we make it to London, we can make a quick trip. You can stand there with a quick flag, trip. And somebody from we can take a picture from.
We're gonna get on somebody's Learjet and zip up there really quick.
Yeah, just take a quick trip to Scotland.
So, but we do plan to go there someday to see it. That's gonna be really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't know. I need to research more of my heritage. I know my Pumphrey name is from Wales, and I actually was in Wales, and my dad said, "Hey, that's where we're from. See if you can find the name Pumphrey anywhere." Mm-hmm. Well, we went to a pretty decent church, and right outside was a cemetery. I found every name I knew except for Pumphrey.
Oh,
I don't know. So
somewhere in Wales,
and I know how it's spelled. It's Pomfrey.
So
Pumphrey, yeah. If you there's a character in the Harry Potter series, Madame Pumphrey.
Oh, okay.
And it's spelled that way. And when they came to America, they slowly changed the name, as always. But we came early, like 1660s, part of the Quaker movement that came to Virginia. So I know a little bit about it by Pumphrey's side, but it, just like your family, when you start looking...
Have you done the DNA thing?
I have not.
See, I was hesitant, but I'm like, you know what? No, fine. Let's do it. And we did. And I was really fascinated to find out. I kind of knew that we were mostly European. I kind of knew that, I knew English, and we kind of assumed Scottish. I knew Irish, and I knew some German. I knew those things. I didn't know to what degree any of those things were, but we kind of had the feeling that those were there. Also found out that I've got some French heritage, and which doesn't make it's not too far of a leap to think about Normandy and and some Scandinavian. Well, my wife found out that she also has Swiss, and hers is mainly the kind of same thing that we've got. She didn't have Scottish, but she's got British, English, Welsh, Irish, German, Switzerland. We also, and we didn't know this either, both of us have some African heritage that we didn't know about.
Oh, yeah.
She has African heritage from Nigeria. and I have from it's like a combination of like North Africa down to East Coast, like Kenya, those regions. Like so, I have no idea how that connects in with our family. That's not something that I'm privy to. Something I need to do more research on that. It's like how does that fit in? You know?
Yeah, and if you don't have to look long in your family history, it branches off in so many crazy directions. Like it's hard. You can track one line of your one name. Okay, but then if you just switch off a little, it's just craziness because there's so many people. Your family.
Well, my wife had always been told that she had Cherokee heritage because she has she's a little darker skinned, and so they're like, well, it's Cherokee, and I don't know if they did that because they just didn't know, or if somebody down the line was like, I mean, I know American history, and it wasn't like something that people might have talked about at the time to have multi-ethnic heritages. And maybe it was hidden on purpose. But I don't know that for my family or family. And so it would be interesting to know, like, where does that connect in? Like, what is the...
I know when you do these things and you see, I mean, we are a petri dish of so many different things. Like, then you think about racism. And it's like, what in the world? Like, that's so crazy concept.
But it's something I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like, if visually, I'm pretty European looking, you know. So if I hadn't done the DNA testing, I would have never known that part of my heritage. And so it's something that I find fascinating, and I hope to be able to dig into to see how it fits. And
I hope you probably do it.
And whether or not, I don't know if that's a good story in my family or if that's a negative story in my family's history. I'd have no idea. Was this something that was it a relationship based on mutual respect, or was it someone had taken advantage of someone else? I don't know. But that's part of it. Are you willing to go and find out these things, even if it drags up some old heartaches? That's something else. And I remember when we first did we were going to send off for the packet or whatever to do the testing, the DNA testing. It's one of the things they said is like, look, like, don't freak out if you get some results that you didn't expect, because our heritages are complicated, more complicated than you might realize. And apparently, I think they were talking more about paternity. But I can see that with family history
Part
too.
poodle.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like I've heard stories about this guy going, hey, Uncle Tom, I have more DNA related to him than I do this other guy. I thought this guy was my dad. Well, come to find out, this, what I'm saying, like,
and Neanderthal DNA as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's in there too. Yeah, I've seen some of that.
Yeah.
But I've seen stories where it's messed up families because they couldn't deal with the results. It revealed something that they were unable to grapple with for whatever reason,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so,
Sure.
but I thought it was it's really an interesting thing. I'm glad we did it, because like I said, it's fun to see the percentages of things too, and then to go, okay, well, where does all this tie together? So many things had to come together to make me. You know what I mean? And that's a weird thought too. Everybody's life, it all has to funnel down somehow, and the chances of that all coming together, to create me as an individual, like that's almost beyond my comprehension.
It's a good way to end it. I think you've done it. This is what brings us together. If 23andMe is going to unite us as a human race, and we realize that our differences
we're really all the same people.
We're really from everywhere, and we're all kind of the same, and there's no reason to be mad at your neighbor. All right, that is the podcast. We will see you on the flip-flop. Goodbye.